wonder why you tend to reach for a candy bar or something sugary in times of stress, or why your attempts to get off of sugar have often failed? In this podcast episode, Danielle Daem and I will explore the intricacies of our relationships with food and sugar. Danielle says in this episode that our relationships and our pattern with food actually directly mirror our relationship with ourself. We get real deep in this episode. We're going to talk about the subconscious layers of our relationship with food, the warning signs of a dysfunctional relationship with food, and how past traumas, both big and small, really shape that relationship. Danielle is going to help us gain a deeper insight into these patterns and our thoughts and behaviors that really shape our relationship with food. And she's also going to give us so many strategies of how to reconnect with our bodies and our emotions through all different strategies like breath work and play and so much more, so we can start this healing journey that goes deep within ourselves. It's a tricky one. There's so many barriers out there, but so much of the work begins inside. Tune in as we unpack the emotional ties that bind us to sugar. This episode is an absolute masterclass on self-awareness and self-compassion. You are going to love it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast. I'm Dani, and I'm so grateful you are returning for another episode. If you haven't already, subscribe, rate, review. It really, really helps the show to be put in front of more people to help the show grow, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do that. So today, my guest is a really good friend of mine, Danielle Daem, the other Sugar Dani, as we call each other. A lot of people have gotten us confused in the past. Danielle was on a past episode of the podcast, episode number 78. So you'll absolutely want to check out that episode too. We talk all about limiting beliefs and self-sabotage and what Danielle calls the inner work to start getting off of sugar and starting to mend that relationship with sugar. But a lot of the stuff that we talk about today, we're going to go into the body. She's a somatic embodiment coach, a sugar freedom expert, and so she really helps do that deep work and figure out these emotional reasons or emotional blockages or things with our ego and our childhood events and all sorts of things that are getting in the way of having a more healthy relationship with sugar and food. I love that our work is so complementary because I work on this physiological piece and she works on this emotional piece, and the two of these together are so, so powerful. If you are loving this information from Danielle, remember she has a podcast that I've linked in the show notes, the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. She also has a YouTube channel. She has great programs. She is a wealth of knowledge. She is absolutely the person I would go to if I was having issues with my relationship with food. She's helped me a lot. And in this episode, you'll see it's like a therapy session. So you are absolutely going to love it. So let's dive into the interview with Danielle Daem. Dan, welcome back to the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast. I think you're my first returning guest.
Really? Oh, I feel so honored.
I know, right?
Yeah. And you're also the only person that calls me Dan, which is so funny. We have to find some sort of way to decipher Dani and Dani, right?
I know, right? My cousin calls me Dan. I'm such a nicknamer, and that it's funny that I automatically will nickname people to my own nicknames.
I love it. I welcome it.
Yeah. So we had you back on the podcast a while back, and I'm going to link to that first episode. I didn't catch the number before we started recording this, but I seriously loved that episode so much. I was taking notes, avid notes, as we were talking last time. And some things that we talked about were all of this inner work. So you call it this inner work to get off of sugar. And I feel like what we do, we always say, is super complementary. So I work on this physiological piece, and you work on this inner work, this emotional world that is driving us to return to, emotional eating behaviors and all sorts of things. So you talked about beliefs and identity, values, fears, people-pleasing, boundaries, healing traumas, self-love, what happens when we don't have other sources of joy or connection. And so we talked about a lot of those topics. So if you haven't watched that episode, definitely go listen to that. I wouldn't say you have to listen to it first, but also check out that episode because I thought it was so powerful and such a great introduction to the work you do. And I think that so many of us here who are trying to improve our blood sugar, improve our health, we all have this potentially less than optimal relationship with food. It's a little complicated, right? As with any relationship. Yeah. So can you talk about why is the relationship that we have with food and sugar, how come it's so complicated?
Oh, my goodness. Why, right? Why are we in this complication? Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me back on. And I definitely encourage everyone to go back and listen to that episode. And a lot has actually shifted in my own life and my own learning and the work that I've done with my clients since recording that episode. So I'm really excited to bring like new, fresh perspective and an even deeper dive understanding of like what's really going on under the surface. And if you haven't listened to that other episode, I will start, and I will answer your question, Dani, but I will start by just really reinforcing here that what Dani was just explaining is, my passion and understanding that the way we're eating and our binging patterns and our addiction patterns, especially around our addiction dependency patterns, are more than just a physical issue, right? Which that's your forte. That's your realm. I love it. I love sending clients your way because that is absolutely your area of expertise. But what I found over the last 8 years in my practice is that even when we completely get sugar out of our body, we balance our blood sugar, we're feeling great, we're losing weight, our hormones are balanced, there is still a very high probability that those old addictive patterns and numbing and coping out patterns will show up if you haven't dealt with the really root causes. And these inner root causes, which are psychological, emotional, energetic, nervous system root causes that we all carry. So I often say, to sum this up, I always say that our relationship and our patterns with food are a direct mirror of our relationship with ourselves. So understanding that there is so much lying under the surface in our subconscious mind and in our nervous system and in the cells of our body energetically that often get ignored, right? We so easily get into all the beautiful work you're doing. We've got this amazing, healthy, clean body, but then something happens in our life, right? And we go right back into numbing on food and being in, toxic relationships, whatever your like coping pattern is, right? And there's reasons for that, which we can get into. So, that kind of answers, I think, a little bit of your question and really understanding that there is so much more below the surface here that we need to understand that this isn't just a one focused journey, with our relationship with sugar. And that's why, I love having conversations with you, Dani, because what we do is two sides of the same coin and both are very vital if you ever want to create, lasting health and a lasting, like peaceful relationship with food and with yourself.
Yeah, I love that. What a beautiful introduction to the work you do and helping us sort of unravel why we might have this complicated relationship with food, that it goes really deep and, like you said, mirrors it parallels that relationship we have with ourselves, which is a really powerful, just something that makes you feel like, whoa, okay. Because it's like, I thought it was just candy, or I just like to eat popcorn sometimes. We have all these things. And so I guess what would someone maybe find themselves doing? What sort of behaviors might someone have if you think that there's some dysfunctional relationship with food, or maybe just someone who may benefit from looking deeper into some of these things? What do you sort of see there?
Yeah, great question. And I'll even be so bold as blanket statement saying that we all have work to do. All of us. Even if you feel like you've got a handle on your relationship with food right now, that's not to say that there's not, more that you can do, or that in a month when your loved one dies and you get spiraled into grief, those patterns come up again, right? So we can go through periods of time where we're feeling great and everything feels like it's figured out. And then life will throw something at us and we're like, wait a second, there's more work for me to do here. So I think there's always work to do, but definitely a couple signs would be, beside the healthy eating pieces. And I know a lot of your clients are, maybe your blood sugar is balanced, you're eating nutritionally, but you catch yourself still wanting to snack, right? You catch yourself still like reaching for food mindlessly. There's a lot of mindless eating, or when life gets hard, food is your go-to, either for celebration, or when you've had a stressful day at work, like you find yourself just reaching for food at any time that you're actually not needing nutrients. So that can be hard to decipher sometimes if you're not really in tune with your body. That emotional mindless eating piece is absolutely huge. And really one of the biggest signs, and I know any woman listening to this will will recognize this is if you notice when you eat, you feel shame or guilt. So if there's ever like you wake up in the morning and you're like, shoot, I wasn't true to my word. I said I was going to fast last night and I didn't. Or I said I wasn't going to eat ice cream last night, but I did, right? When we go against our word to ourselves, it's a really big sign that there's underlying patterns that are obviously driving our behavior. It's not our mind, it's our body driving here. And there's some work to be done. So if you notice any of that, like, I did something wrong, or I shouldn't have done that last night, or you wake up feeling any of that shame, if you have any shame around your body, like there's so many levels here, which I know we all have. And I'm still on watch for a lot of this. So those are a couple of really, really great places to kind of start being aware of.
Yeah, those are great tips to tune into. And you mentioned being in tune with your body. And so I feel like when we are both talking about being in tune with our body, the way I talk about it is like, do I have a headache? How's my energy? How, was my sleep last night? Am I feeling, all those physical symptoms? So when you talk about being in tune with your body, can you sort of explain that and go deeper into that a little bit more? Because I have a feeling we have a different way of being in tune. And so I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for inviting that question because I'm very passionate about this. I'm seeing more and more. And actually this year, this is one of the biggest things that shifted for me is getting more into somatic work. I've actually now certified as a somatic embodiment coach, and I'm doing more somatic work with my clients because I'm understanding the role of what's actually going in our body, actually driving our behaviors and our thought processes. So what you are teaching, Dani, is absolutely part of it, right? The physical sensations of our body is really, in my opinion, stage one, right? Those are often the easiest, and actually for some people still really hard, places to start noticing like, are you hot? Are you cold, right? Do you have a headache? Is there a pain in your neck? Or is there like something going on with your ankle, right? Starting to notice physical sensations is like level one. And it is a really important part of being connected with your body. But the truth here is, and what I want people to really understand is that and I'm not going to go down some sort of feminism rabbit hole, but we do live in a patriarchal society. And what that means is we have put masculine traits and energy on a pedestal. And every moment of our lives, we have been praised when we are living in our head. So when we get good grades, right? When we do a really good job at something, when we mentally solve a problem, we live in a world that teaches us since the day we're born that the priority and how we survive and how we succeed in this life is by using our brain. It's by using our head. It's thinking through things. It's learning new skills, right? This is all very like head stuff that we learn. And in that process, we learn to completely abandon the wisdom of our body. So when I talk about getting back in our body, I talk about actually deeply energetically learning how to connect with who you truly are. And this is your true essence, your wisdom, your intuition, and the vast amount of knowledge that is actually held energetically in your body. We don't actually make decisions from our brain. The decisions or choices that we make in our life stem from the energetic centers in our body that then get sent to our brain. So we're starting to understand now, especially in the world of like psychology and therapy, that the mind work and mind stuff only takes us so far, because what's actually happening in our mind, whether it's our belief systems or our habits or, the choices that we're making, are actually coming from a deeper place of wisdom, actually being sent information. And don't quote me on this, but the training that I did in January, we talked a lot about this as we were learning about breath work and about tapping into the nervous system, as my teacher was sharing that science is now proving that information in our neurons and in our nerves, 20% of information in our body is actually sent from our head to our body, and 80% is sent from our body to our mind. So this is teaching us that everything that we experience as human beings starts first in our bodies and then gets sent to our head for human processing, right? For making sense of it, for taking action, for making checklists, right? Applying for jobs, like whatever that looks like in terms of like living in the masculine. So this is a long way of answering your question. What I mean when I say getting in the body is understanding the vital importance of reconnecting from our head down into our body. and actually reconnecting from our body up to our head. So getting out of the head. Most of us have lived our lives thinking. And this is why when you sit in meditation, you can't go still, right? Or quiet, right? There's thoughts all the time, even when you're sleeping, in the middle of the night, when you get up, when you're having a blood sugar crash and you wake up with your mind rolling, right? So this is, how do we reconnect to the wisdom of our body? And in this process, we must learn how to trust ourselves, how to trust our bodies, how to trust our inner wisdom, going against everything that we've learned about how we outsource all of our decisions, right? We put everything outside of ourselves, right? The government knows what's right for me. My teachers know what's right for me. My parents know what's right for me. We constantly are giving away our power when we live in this world and in our head. So when we fully get back into our bodies, into the experience of what is happening inside us energetically, emotionally, spiritually, right? Even physically, the physical sensations like, oh, this pain in my neck actually has a deeper level. And in somatic therapy, we can really actually spend time with, for example, that pain in your neck. And there's always a message in that pain. Your body knows what it needs. Your body always knows what it needs to heal. It knows exactly what is blocking you from having a healthy relationship with sugar. It knows everything because it is tuned in to the higher tapestry of the universe, right? We're going to get a little woo-woo because energetically we are all connected, and your higher self speaks to you through your body, right? And it can be pain, right? And for some people, it can be emotions. For some people, it's colors and sounds and, different maybe psychic abilities, right? That show up. So there's a lot of ways that energetically we get information, downloaded information. I know both you and I, Dani, have had lots of these experiences where we get these downloads, and it's a really cool experience to have that connection, whether or not, whatever you believe in, of course, whatever higher power you believe in, but even just on a human experience, knowing that we have this voice and this wisdom, and our body has a message for us. Our body knows what we need, and we don't have to be outsourcing our health anymore, and our lives and our decisions and everything that we navigate through. So that's a little bit of what I mean about we're getting in the body. We're just really grounded. And a lot of this involves and calls for us to slow the heck down. And I know you and I have had conversations about that. This is hard, especially as entrepreneurs or busy people, because we live in a world that's taught us to do all the things in order to be worthy, right? And we have forgotten the art of just slowing down and actually being in the present moment. That is a constant quest that I am on, and that is really the only way to fully be embodied and in tune with your body and what you need in any moment, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what's a yes, what's a no. It's amazing we start to play around with that energy and let our bodies actually guide our lives in the direction that we're meant to go in, as opposed to our heads.
I love that. What a beautiful response. And so I'm hearing you say that by getting in tune with our bodies, by listening to our bodies, which are sending us so many signals and messages all the time for our brain to interpret, not as much the other way around, that by getting more in tune, we can understand what we need better, so we can make choices that are more in integrity with what we're actually wanting and needing. Is that how you would sort of summarize it? And that this, like you were saying about the masculine, that the doing and how we need to be thinking about things, problem solving, I do so relate to totally being in my head. And I actually started over the summer, I started working with a somatic therapist because I was realizing that I have little to no knowledge of what I'm feeling or needing. And it has been a journey, and I'm still, I feel like in first grade on this journey. I'm still at the very beginning stages, but I am noticing I'm getting better. But sometimes I would notice, and I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of people pleasing, and especially as women in our society, we're very trained to be people pleasing and saying yes to things and being nice and being agreeable. And so what I feel that I personally was sort of trained to do through my upbringing, through society, whatever it is, no blame, it's just how I turned out, is to actively repress whatever I'm feeling. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm feeling because I need to say yes to this thing because they did me a favor. Or like, you know, like you feel indebted to somebody. Well, I have to say yes. I don't want to look like a bitch or whatever your feelings are. So it's this active ignoring of what you're feeling in your body. And one of the first things I noticed when I started to try to get more in touch with my feelings, which I would love to talk to you about and like figure out how to do this. But one of the first things I noticed was someone asked me a question and it kind of felt like, oh, do you mind if such and such? And it felt like a gut punch. That's all. Like there was like almost like how you'd say like butterflies in your stomach or like just this gut punch. And that was it. And I guess I didn't know what to do with that information, but sometimes does it start with like this really vague feeling? Like how do we go about like diving into the world of, you know, what's happening in our body? Because sometimes I could even feel like I'm trying to tune in and it's almost sealed off. It's like, no, you can't go in there. So like, how do we start with this? Like, what do we do? Is that the right next question to ask in this?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, there's no right question, no people pleasing here. There's no direction. So love that. And thank you for sharing your story. I think that's really incredible and really inspiring for everyone. I know for me, it's been very similar. It's like this new world of like, what do I feel? And knowing that I'm allowed to feel, right? There's a lot of work that we need to do around just feeling in general, because we live in a society that has taught us that. So I want to backpedal a little bit here, because exactly what you mentioned is really important understanding. So what do we do is actually by understanding what's really going on behind the surface. So I'm going to keep this, you know, surface level, beginner level for everyone. But essentially what is happening when we are trying to feel and trying to connect in our body, and we're realizing that it's hard, or I can't feel, or I'm blocked, or like, I don't understand what this gut punch even means, or what's going on here, is understanding that we all have massive protective shields over our energetic emotional body. And this has come from very real experiences. And I'm going to use the word trauma. A lot of people have various definitions of what that means, but we all have some sort of trauma from our childhood. The first sort of 10 years of life are really influential in how we develop our sense of ourselves and the world and what it means to actually be safe in our body. So all of this will make sense. And we all have varying examples of this, whether it's a big T trauma, when you think of trauma, the very clear things. For me, it was actually small T traumas. And I learned, in my training and in my own journey that these are actually monumental as a child. There was experiences where as an infant, my mom went to work. And as an infant, I internalized that as my mom's not coming back and I'm going to die. So there is like abandonment wounds, there is emotional blockages. And most of us, specifically around the emotional piece, learn and have come from, decades of generations where emotions were not welcome. So as a child, we learn subconsciously that it's not safe to feel. If I express my emotions, I am not loved. I am sent to my room. I am abandoned. I am talked down to. I am maybe yelled at or gotten angry at. So we learn how to essentially get the love and affection that we need from our caregivers as children. And one of the basic ways that we do that in a world where emotions are not welcome is to learn how to stuff them down. So many of us have learned as a very real and necessary coping mechanism to turn off and bottle up and stuff down our emotions. And in this process, we have learned subconsciously and in our nervous system, which is our basic system that is online the moment we are born to keep us alive. It is our alarm system in our body. We learn that it's not safe to feel, and it's not safe to then be in our body. So we now carry around as adult human beings this pattern in our nervous system, really deeply embedded, that we're never safe. And it's not safe to be our true selves. living in a world that has stifled that, right? To how to conform, you have to be a certain way in order to get people to like you. These are all very necessary survival techniques that we developed as coping mechanisms as children. And in order to abandon ourselves, to shape ourselves into the type of person we're meant to be in order to get the love that we need, right? We stop expressing our feelings. We stop being ourselves, right? We start learning how to sit quietly and raise our hand. This is some of the earliest stuff that we learn in school, right? Be a good little girl, stay quiet. Good girls don't cry. Like whatever the messaging was that you got shaped your system into like really stifling your truth, right? So we're living kind of in this pressured environment inside internally, and you're not even aware of it, right? That this is all very deeply going on in the cells and the energy in your body of it's not okay for me to be me. It's not okay to feel. And I have to keep those things hidden at all costs. So understanding that, I encourage everybody listening, that is a very quick example of that. You can come listen to more over on my podcast, of course. But really understanding that, you can see that it would be really hard to just sit down and learn how to feel, right? Like this is such a process. And like you're saying, Dani, you've had to like really learn this. It's like, oh my goodness, this is hard. Like I can sit in meditation for every day for a week and I still feel nothing, right? Why can't I cry, right? Why can't I, have big emotions, right? And I just want to encourage anyone who's kind of starting on that journey just to have that self-compassion, because it is decades of barriers, right? Your ego and your protective measures in your body are trying to keep you safe. And this is actually to keep you from dying, right? Like it subconsciously, this is if I express my emotions, my caregiver will abandon me and not love me and I will die. That is actually the imprint that is going on, which is so wild because consciously as adults, we're like, that's not possible. Of course I'm not going to die. Like I'm good. I'll figure it out. I'll rationalize myself into get a new job, right? Or do what I need to do. But it's beyond the head here. This is the messaging that is running in our body that is then driving us into this life of escaping, right? Escaping emotions. So when difficult emotions come up and they're trying to be felt, they're trying to speak to you, they're trying to be expressed. So we can use grief as a really big one, right? Or even depression or anger or rage. We do whatever we learned as a coping mechanism to avoid that because it's not safe to feel it. So this is where sugar comes in. This is where cocaine comes in. This is where shopping addiction comes in. This is addiction 101, is this inability to actually be safe in our bodies and coming up against like this human experience that we live where crappy stuff happens almost every week, right? Or every day. And the emotions that come from that are very real. And instead of feeling those emotions, we might feel a little bit of discomfort and then immediately go get ice cream, right? Or immediately distract ourselves on Netflix and Instagram and ice cream, right? Or wine. That was my trifecta, was wine, pizza, candy, Netflix. Like I had it all going on. So that's really where you start, is understanding what is going on for you, right? Understanding the deeper level of these patterns in your nervous system and understanding that your nervous system is probably dysregulated and not working correctly, just like blood sugar dysregulation, right? We need to look at nervous system dysregulation, because if you're not able to teach your nervous system how to be safe and how to feel safe in your body, you will forever be looking for ways to escape. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I want to go into that nervous system regulation piece. I just wanted to circle back to something you said at the beginning, that like how when we are younger, having those, whether small t, big T traumas, that it's that we feel like we're going to die. And it's that we feel like we can't express this. That's how intensely our body is trying to pattern us to not do that. And so it helps sort of, first off, it made me very emotional when you said that. Like I felt bad for myself, like baby Dani. Well, Dano, because that's what everybody called me back when I was a kid. Like not feeling safe to express, like, of course I'm getting emotional. It's like therapy session. But not feeling safe to express things. And I remember like specific things that are just not good. It was like, we can express the good stuff, but if it falls under not good, we don't go there, like better fix it, or like not talk about it. Yeah. So a lot of stuff that just, if you think back to your family of origin, thinking back to like what emotions were okay, like did my family express? Because I think that different families express different things. So
Yeah.
there, maybe the family, it was okay to express anger. And so then maybe your pattern is now you go to like anger is what you know. For me,
Yeah.
crying comes real easily because that was okay. Like it was okay to cry in my family. So if I have anger, I might cry because that like was the only thing that was like allowed. So, I mean, that's not, crying isn't an emotion, it isn't an emotion, but sometimes that's like the only way out. I wouldn't yell, but I would cry, right? Is that sort of under that umbrella? Am I
For
thinking right here?
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And noticing those patterns. And obviously, you're doing some great work for yourself, Dani, and noticing those patterns and how things are even modeled to you. That's exactly what you're touching on. Like, I can share definitely in my story, like my mom, for example, never showed any emotion. She was always, to this day, very even keeled. Nothing bothers her, very cool. And as a child, then I started doubting my emotions. Like, is there something wrong with me because I'm crying and I've never seen my mom cry, right? Or because I'm feeling, unsafe and like I've never seen her express emotions. So the range of emotions was not modeled for me. And anger, another thing too, is to notice like what's modeled and what's not. And then the things that are modeled for you, like you're sharing, crying was okay, right? Or anger, even for some people, was it modeled in a healthy way? Usually not, right? For me, anger was modeled by my dad and brother having yelling matches in the kitchen. And I became so scared as a sensitive child that I would have to leave the house and go walk around the neighborhood. Like I remember being so scared that like, is everything going to be okay? Is our family falling apart? Am I going to be kicked out of the family? Are they yelling about me? Right? Like we internalize everything as a child. So as an adult, those situations might not feel like a big deal. You're like, oh yeah, I knew they were just fighting and they're just fiery or whatever. But I could put myself in little Dani's shoes, and I've done a lot of going and hanging out with little Dani, which is an important part of the process. My little Dani, not yours. We should hang out with our little Danis one day. It's so fun. And like really actually experiencing viscerally what she experienced, right? Because she didn't have in those first 10 years of life a concept of the world, right? A concept of how to function in the world without our caregivers. So everything is about us, right? That is a big part of like those first years of life. And we soak in, right? Like just like eating behaviors are modeled by our parents, right? So what emotions were okay or not okay and how were they modeled? And usually it's not in a healthy way, right? Usually it's not in a way that we're validated. Usually with emotions, it's in a way that, our parents, bless their hearts, wanted to make us feel better. And in that, we subconsciously learn that it's not okay that we feel bad. Right? So this message that we see on all these beautiful inspirational Instagram quotes these days, it's okay to not feel okay, right? And relearning that has been quite a journey for me. It's been very difficult. So it's okay to feel like crap today, right? Or it's okay to be grieving. It's okay to be a mess. It's okay not to know why, all these human experiences that I'm having, because I never had that modeled, right? It was always, you're crying, let's make you feel better with some ice cream, right? Or a popsicle. And those are the beginning stages of our addiction to sugar, right? In learning how to use food to escape those emotions or to quote unquote feel better, right? To get that dopamine hit and escape, run away from the heavy stuff.
Yeah, so good. And so this is just really so foundational to why we, can't get off sugar. It makes so much sense that it's like we have to go into this relationship with ourselves and that I feel like that's for everything, how we show up for everything. And it's no surprise that, our relationship with food is affected by all of our traumas and our coping mechanisms and our lack of ability to feel. So we'll just try to numb, or we try to, we naturally dissociate, and we're trying to protect ourselves. So I feel like it's probably so easy for us to go into that shame and blame spiral of why am I doing this? But I think this is where so much compassion can come in, and grace for ourselves, and that think about your baby, your inner child being just wanted to feel better, and that's what you knew, right? So talk to us more about that nervous system dysregulation stuff, because I've been seeing a ton of this on Instagram. And I know that a lot of my people who deal with reactive hypoglycemia and adrenal issues, blood sugar issues, there's such a big nervous system
Yeah.
component to this. So I'd love to learn more from you about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about it. And I'll share before as a caveat, I'm not a registered or trained therapist or counselor or psychologist, but I have been doing a lot of my own learning from people like Gabor Mate, my teachers in the trainings that I've done around somatic embodiment and a lot of nervous system understanding there. So this is new for me as well, this language and this understanding of this system in our body that's essentially always operating to keep us safe, right? It's always scanning the environment, right? We have certain fibers in our being that we can always tell if we're safe or not. It's that system that comes on when you're walking down a dark street alone at night, right? And you kind of get like, ooh, that uneasiness. That's your nervous system being like, beep, 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 beep. You're not safe here, right? So thinking of like a home alarm system. And for most of us, just because of where we live, because of the world we're in, because of the society that we live in, the era we live in, the decade we live in, us and our parents, a lot of this actually can be handed down generationally. And there's a lot of fun stuff there. But essentially, where we begin to get dysregulated, I've already mentioned a little bit, is these experiences as we're children start to form our sense of, am I safe or not? And in the process of like unlearning how to be ourselves, learning how to fit in a box, right? Learning to stuff our emotions down, right? Our system starts to malfunction, right? We almost have been, most of us, wired wrong. And I don't like using the word wrong, but the wires have been crossed in the development of our operating system, right? We'll think of it like some sort of techie reference, which I'm not a techie person. So these systems and wires and neurons and neural pathways in our body have actually been wired incorrectly based off of the lack of really basic needs that we didn't understand we needed until, this last decade, right? We're starting to understand a lot about child development and the psychological, emotional, energetic needs of authenticity, attunement, attachment, obviously unconditional love, and a lot of just energetic validation, emotional expression, like these things that have not really been fostered in our generations before us and are just now starting to come to light. So in these patterns start getting absorbed in our system. And like I said earlier, we learn that we're not safe when we do certain things or when we have an emotion. So we're now adults living in a very stressful world, a very busy world, right? Trying to keep up with the patriarchy, trying to do all the things. Our worth, because we learn this as children, we're worthy, or we get love when we do good, right? Or we check a lot of things off our checklist, or we're really busy and we look successful. Whatever belief systems were really modeled for you and created there have led us to continually live in this state of dysregulation. And when I mean dysregulation, I really mean for most of us that our nervous system has actually no reference for off. Off meaning deep, deep present rest. Most of us have never had that experience in our body. We have always been stuck in the fight, flight, or freeze mode, which some of you are familiar with that terminology, in our main nervous system, and always kind of on guard, always looking out, for making sure people like us, making sure, we're making enough money, making sure that we're safe in the community that we live in. There's just a lot of ways that our system needs to be on. And we have forgotten, or just even never learned in our body, that it is actually safe to be ourselves and we can let go. So when we get into the somatic work with whether you're working with a therapist or a coach or, doing psychedelic journeys, like a lot of somatic work, the goal there is to actually teach or retrain your nervous system how to shut off, how to take a break, right? Because you can imagine, and I know we talk a lot about stress, right? We know a lot about cortisol. This is actually below that. What is going on is your nervous system is on. It's fired up, right? And it's releasing the stress hormones into your body to help you run, right? Or escape danger and stay alive. So this is where this like chronic stress is actually chronic nervous system dysregulation. That is actually the proper terminology below the word stress, is this constant release of fear hormones, right? Or safety hormones being released into your body that we now know dramatically impact your blood sugar and your hormones and inflammation in your body and your brain's ability to function and all the other things in your body. So we can think of, repatterning and healing the nervous system as just learning how to rest, learning how to turn it off so that it can recover, right? It's no wonder people's adrenals are totally fried. It's never had a rest. It's no wonder why our blood sugar is totally fried. It's never had our insulin's been working 24/7, right? So we need these periods of time. And most people may mistakenly think, well, I had a good sleep, right? Or, I feel really relaxed today, right? And that's often not the case, right? We may feel relaxed because we have no reference for what true relaxation is. So a great example of this that many could maybe relate to is this is the whole purpose of Savasana at the end of a yoga class. This is the whole purpose, is to move the energy of your body, to connect with your breath, to somatically get in through movement, and then to let go, to essentially die, right? Like that's what Savasana is, a corpse pose, right? To totally let your system go and be fully in the present moment, not worried about the past, not worried about the future, and actually in deep, deep therapeutic and healing rest state. So this takes a lot of practice. And this is what I'm really fascinated with in my own journey and in the work that I'm doing with my clients now, is the different tools, things like conscious connected breath work, obviously, different types of movement, dance. There's a lot of ways that we can start to teach the nervous system to rest and to release what it's still holding. Right? There's a lot of emotional baggage that we've got to let go. We got to let it go. And we need to get into the body in order to do that. The emotions don't come from the head, they come from the body. So does that answer your question? I know that was a bit of a long answer, but there's a lot here to these layers. And it's just so fascinating when we can understand that we're dysregulated. And I firmly believe this is why we live in a society where everybody's anxious, everybody's on antidepressants, everybody's addicted to something, right? Everybody's feeling stressed or overwhelmed nonstop. It's just living in this constant state of dysregulation is exhausting, and it's absolutely ruining our health, right? This is beyond what the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry are doing to us, right? This is a deeper level of this leading to disease, right? Leading to actual, physical ailments and disease that we're seeing now.
Yeah. So are you saying that these little traumas, we know that they sort of live in the body if we don't, let's say, express them, or is that right? So if we're not expressing the emotions that we have, and we have these traumas, little t traumas, just basically shit happening to us, and we're not getting it out and we're sort of repressing it, that can lead us to sort of always be our nervous system state to sort of be chronically, let's say, activated into that fight, flight, freeze space. Is that a connection that we can make?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. There's a piece there. I mean, it's very convoluted, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to give the quick version of it here. And to be honest, I'm still learning and still actively engaging in trainings where I can learn more, because it's so nuanced. And for each of us, there's slightly different tendencies that show up, right? And we all have slightly different coping mechanisms. For some people, it shows up as that intense people pleasing, right? Or for some people, it's perfectionism, right? Anybody here listening? Yeah. It's all of the things, right? Or it's, really big emotions. For some people, it's not feeling emotions at all. There's a lot of different ways that we cope, and we've subconsciously found a way to manage. But essentially, yes, there is this imprint in most of us that is, I'm not safe. Right? It's not safe to be in my body. It's not safe to feel, right? Or to be myself, all of these sort of messages in the patterning. And then in that, if I'm never safe to be myself, then my nervous system is always going to be on, right? The alarm is always on. Can I ever fully rest? Can I really just let go and be myself with this person, or even alone with myself, right? And just that kind of letting go feeling that we don't actually have a lot of experiences with in our world, right? And I know I catch myself holding, you'll notice even tension in your body or your shoulders, right? Or holding your breath. This is a really huge sign that we're not really calmly going through our life. We're running around with all the things to do, way too much on our plate, just continuing this sort of activation. And, a lot of people will notice that in their breathing pattern, right? They breathe really shallow. We only breathe into our chest, not our stomach. We're just really in this state of like the opposite of peace, right? Of the opposite of like just calmly enjoying life. And I firmly believe like this is the path to actually feeling joy and feeling happiness, right? Is in those moments when we can actually rest and actually be ourselves. And a favorite place of mine for this, and something that I'm continuing to work on, is in play. So this is a really important part of this journey, is to learn how to bring playful energy, because we only play as children when we feel safe, and as adults. And I see this actually, and you and I both huge cat lovers. I see this in cats as well. We fostered some cats that have been hugely traumatized, and they would just hide. And then one day they started playing, right? And that's like the sign of like, I feel safe here, right? I feel safe to play, right? We don't play if we don't feel safe. So there's a lot of beautiful work that we can do in like play. And I love bringing play into my life. I'm a super silly person, and I'm owning that a bit more every day.
Yes, when we hung out in Costa Rica, we had a lot of fun playing. Yes. For sure.
Yes.
One of the things that I used to do that was sort of this really great outlet for play was acro yoga. And it was so much fun. It was so silly. Like you'd fall and, like it was in a safe way, and lots of laughs. And it was really playful because it wasn't really like this goal-oriented thing. It was just to have fun while you were doing it. And that's, I think, what the definition of play is, just like there's no goal to play. It's just whatever
fun.
It is. I did want to share, and I'm not sure if I told you this personally, because Dani and I are also friends off air. And so I'm not sure if I told you this in a voice note, but I started going back ever since I moved to Austin a couple months ago. I rejoined a yoga studio, and I had stopped going to yoga. I felt a little bit unhappy with sort of the culture of certain yoga studios, and I decided that I'm just going to go into a yoga studio, be open-minded, take what I need, leave the rest. And I started going to these classes called Deep Chill, but if you go to a yoga studio, you may find they're called restorative yoga classes, or even yin. It's not as relaxing. It's more like holding a stretch and relaxing into it. But I highly recommend looking into restorative yoga, because it's the only place where basically restorative is you are laying and you're very supported in these different poses. So you're laying on your back, and let's say the soles of your feet are together in kind of a butterfly position, but there's bolsters under your legs. So you're not doing this stretch that's opening, but you're really supported laying in these different positions. And the first thing I started noticing was how fidgety I was. And I would just move and fix something, and an itch, and fix this, and adjust this. And it was, as you're laying there, you have nothing to do but kind of watch your thoughts and watch how you're showing up. And so I was like, wow, it's natural for me to continue to move, and it feels hard to feel still. And I just felt like that was so much of the momentum that we have. Like my nervous system wants to control, wants to fix, wants to improve, wants to make this better. And it was like, wow, can I just sit with this? And it's like, oh, I want to pull my shirt down a little. Can I sit with this discomfort? So it allows me space. These classes just allow me space to kind of watch my thoughts, feel into my body, find stillness, and like almost ask my body, not demand it, but be like, can you be still? Can we try this? And invite stillness. And it's the only time I'm freaking still. It's the only time I can really slow down. And I just get these crazy downloads and epiphanies, and my life starts to connect and I make sense. And one of the biggest things for me is that I discovered this at yesterday's class, was that it felt like it's the only time that I can hear myself, my true voice. And I'm still in my head, but without the impact of others' opinions, because the people pleasing is so strong. So it's like I can finally hear my own voice and feel what my body is telling me. And so it feels like this moment of, okay, this is I'm going inward and it's just me. And so I feel like that practice is so important for me. I have to leave the house. I have to, like, I'm not disciplined enough to do it myself. But if you don't have a class in your area and you find, someone on YouTube or anyone or some sort of practice where you can connect to stillness, I think that is so powerful, because also you were saying, like, our bodies sending so many messages to our brain. And oftentimes I find, okay, my brain is racing. Like, I can't will it to be still, but what I can do is relax, because if my shoulders are hunched and I'm very forward and my brow is furrowed, the message that my body is sending my brain is like, oh, she's in an attack position, so she must be ready to attack. So our body is so much dictating to our brain how we should feel. So I did remember that one lesson of, if you want to calm your mind, to get in there through calming the body. So body scan meditations, progressive muscle relaxation meditations, all those things can be helpful tools. Is there anything else you would add to that and other things?
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story, and very impactful. Of course, stillness is such a powerful practice for tuning into our inner wisdom. This is something I know I haven't done this in a while, actually. I need to book another one, but it reminds me, just hearing you share that, it reminds me of when I take myself away on my Dani retreats. So I intentionally, every quarter, roughly every 3 months, 3 or 4 months. Yeah, only you're allowed to come. Just Dani's only. I'll take myself away and very intentionally go into kind of like my own little cave. I'll rent an Airbnb. In the summer, I'll go camping, and I'll take myself away to spend time with me and my thoughts. So I will completely disconnect. And this is actually one of the most powerful tools that you can do to get back into your body, is turn off technology. And that is terrifying for most people, right? What do I do without my phone? What if somebody calls me? They will survive. It will be okay. You can last a day without your phone, or an hour. Start there. But I'll take myself away for a couple of days to be completely offline. I will have my computer with me because I like to type, like, when downloads come through. I wrote a poem once. It was really inspired. So I like to be brainstorming. But every time I do that, about at day 2, right away I can drop in. But around day 2, everything that I'm struggling with in my life, or any question that I have, all of the answers come pouring in. All of them. Like you're saying, in those yoga classes, you'll start getting those downloads, you'll start getting those insights. So we must tune out the world around us, the distractions, the noise, the constant noise that we live in, social media, the news, your friends, the people in your household, right? All the noise that we live around, to isolate ourselves, to really hear the voice inside. And that is a practice in its own, right? It takes a lot of time for some people to really start hearing that voice, but that is that wisdom that we're talking about the body. So creating that space for yourself to just think about where can you tune out the world, right? And it may be a yoga class. It might be tucked away at an Airbnb in the woods for me. It might be somewhere else for you, right? It might be on a walk in nature without headphones, right? Without, things in. So starting to create those spaces for yourself will help that inner voice, that intuition, your higher self, whatever the heck you want to call it, coming through. Another thing that I really love, speaking more specifically around the nervous system, is cold water therapy. And I know you love it too. And I know you don't have anywhere cold enough to go out in nature like I do. But I absolutely love this, for not just for the physical benefits of blood sugar regulation and inflammation and all the good stuff that we know now about saunas and about cold plunges, but the act of actually training your physical body to be relaxed in such extreme discomfort is one of the most powerful things we can do for our nervous system to re-regulate. So can I be in this physical discomfort of ice water, right? Or in my case, a freezing cold ocean or river, and connect to my breath and relax all the muscles in my body. So this is something that I really deeply practice, is can I get in to the water slowly with intention? Can I sit there and just focus on relaxing every single muscle in my body while I calm my breath? So this is, again, practices of retraining my nervous system to be in an inhospitable environment, because it's really freaking cold and I hate being in there, and feel safe. and know that, and like, can I let go? Can I relax? And that's kind of like weightlifting for your nervous system, right? It's like really training that. And one of the things that I deeply love about that practice, aside from getting out feeling like I just tackled Mount Everest and I can get on with my day, right? Like I just did that, and just all the other benefits that we get from that. But I wanted to mention cold water therapy there as like an actual tool for nervous system regulation, right? To put ourselves in positions where it's really uncomfortable, to learn how to be uncomfortable, or to be comfortable with discomfort, right? Yeah. And that's a very important tool that we need in our system for when very uncomfortable emotions show up, or very uncomfortable conversations show up with people around us, right? Or you get fired from work and that's really uncomfortable, right? We get this internal turmoil of heavy emotions or difficult things, and we can train our system to know that we're safe in that. It's okay. We can handle it. I can navigate my way out of that. Obviously, having a proper support network and team, to support you with that and navigate through. So yeah, I wanted to mention those.
Yeah, so good. You said I love cold therapy, and I have to say I hate it.
Well, I know you do it. You hate it, but you do it.
I love the idea of it, but I don't love it. I wish I did more, but it's something I was just talking with a mutual friend of ours, Molly Eastman, about the fact that we want to do more cold therapy. But there is a caveat with that I'm just going to say, because I know a lot of my listeners have reactive hypoglycemia, and adrenal issues. If that is you, and in the 2 weeks leading up to your menstrual cycle, if you are a cycling person, then that is not the time to do these cold plunges. This is a practice where someone is feeling strong, resilient, and then pushing on top of that this stressor will make them stronger. And so it's a really amazing practice. And I just like to qualify that for people, because I do feel that important. So many times we can like try to biohack. It's like, well, this is a healthy thing. It's like, well, yeah, like running is healthy, but you wouldn't tell someone with a broken ankle that running is healthy, right? So we have to, but it is that idea of finding comfort in the discomfort. I think we're so cushy. It's like, oh, it's got to be 72 degrees, and it's like I need to be sitting on my ergonomic chair, and it's like
we're too comfortable. We're just too comfortable in this world for sure. So yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Dani, because I want to add to that. I don't always cold plunge either. Mm-hmm. This is a great example we're using around really listening to the body. Yes. There are definitely times of the month where I'm like, I'm really exhausted, or I'm leading up to my menstrual cycle, and I'm like, hell no, I'm not. I don't go for intense runs. I don't go in the sauna that week and really get super hot. I don't go cold plunging. For me, it's not necessarily like time bound. It's very like I wake up in the morning and I tune into my body. Like, okay, what do I need today? Oh, I just need some deep rest. I'm not doing anything hardcore today. So like, again, that's that next level of when we are in tune with what our body needs, we don't let that Instagram post that says everybody should cold plunge every day of the month affect us. We go, that's cool.
Or lifting weights. I love that you said this.
Yeah.
Because it is so true that it's okay to not be doing what people on Instagram are doing. And so many of us, you just said something so important. So many of us, what we need is deep rest. And we're not doing that. We're like, well, I should be working out, and I do it too. I'm like, I'm going to only do weightlifting like in the first 2 weeks of my cycle. And then I'm like, but I haven't worked out in a while, so I'm going to do this the week before my period. And then I have like a session that was everything felt so heavy. It was so hard. It's like, so we do these things too. We're not perfect about it, but that idea of accepting that rest is sometimes the most productive thing that you could do. And
100%.
As two Enneagram 1s sitting here, like we are.
I get it.
And both have hard times with that, but accepting and allowing that deep rest is productive, and it is a beautiful gift that we all deserve. And some people listening with little kids are like, I know I need rest, but I wish. But it's like, then where can we ask our partners for support, or drop the kids off with their grandparents,
or teach the kids how to rest?
How
can we sit in stillness together?
Beautiful. Right? Yes. Love it.
Yeah. Or go out in nature together, right? That can be restful. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, Dani. And I want to add to that, because I've gotten almost too good at allowing rest sometimes. And this can be a really, for me, and I don't know if anyone resonates, but I want to just share this because it can be a trap that we fall into where you might get into, well, my body just always wants me to rest, right? It can be, there's a fine line between what's truly what your body needs today and what your ego is tricking you into. There have been many times I've caught myself oh, my body just needs to rest today because I don't want to go out in the cold and go for a run, right? Because I'm being a little bit lazy, because I'm just like, the resistance is there to doing that hard thing. So there was a really fine line, and this is like level 12 of really tuning into your body, and I'm still working on it, is like, am I just making an excuse, or is this actually my truth today and what my body needs? So there's a lot of like tricks there that we do play on ourselves as well. So I've definitely been through that a lot lately. It's like, oh, I don't need to exercise, because I'm just tired, right? And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure like that's just an excuse and I need to go out.
Yeah. So Danielle, where can people work with you if they are knowing that they want to do more, if they want to go well beyond the food and dive into this inner work, somatic work, learning to interpret their feelings so that they can have a better relationship with themselves, with others, with food, and show up as their best selves? Where can they do that?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I love talking about this stuff, and I want to come back again. There's so much more I want to dive into. But yeah, anybody who resonated with me, definitely, I would say start by coming and listening to my podcast. Get a better sense of what I'm talking about here. I go deeper into a lot of these topics. It's called the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. Dani has been a guest. You've been a returning guest. We're about to just air your second episode as well, which I'm so excited. And then you can come and find me on my website, which, full disclosure, needs a total revamp. I haven't touched my website in a long time. So the best things that I kind of have going on right now, and the way that I support my client, is group programs a few times a year. So I'm going to be launching my Break Free from Sugar program again in January, February. And yes, as Dani just said, I am finally getting into in-person retreats. So last summer, I hosted my first Somatic or Sugar Freedom Embodiment retreat, where we did a lot of this inner work, and it was so profound. There is nothing compared to what we can do in person together. So I'm going to be hosting another one of those this spring. So you can come and get on the wait list. I can make sure that Dani's got those links for the show notes, and you can come get on the wait list for both of those things, and just come reach out, find me on Instagram, on Facebook, reach out. I would love to hear from you and answer any questions that you might have.
Love that. Thanks so much, Dan. And your retreat looked absolutely amazing. And
I got to get you at the next one.
Yes, I had
Come on.
the double Dani retreat. It's going to be great. So thanks so much for being here. Love you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.